Well, there has been a lot of talk in the Detroit mayoral race about businesses, neighborhoods, and keeping the momentum going in the city. But today, we're going to dig more into one of the most important aspects of any city, the education system. City Council President Mary Sheffield and Triumph Church Pastor Solomon Kinlock are facing off in the general election. In reporting done by Chalkbeat Detroit, both candidates say they plan to tackle attendance issues. We'll take a look at some of these numbers. In the Detroit Public School Community District, about 60% of students were considered chronically absent during the last school year, and that's far above the state average of 30%. If a student misses 10% or 18 days of the school year, they are considered chronically absent. After the primary election, we asked Mary Sheffield and Solomon Kinlock their plans to help boost education in Detroit.
I believe that the mayor has to be a strong partner. The conversation should not be about who controls the school system at this point, but how is the mayor going to come in and help change outcomes? And that is my goal and my commitment. We know that absenteeism is the #1 issue, and oftentimes our young people are not coming to school because of the social determinants, whether it's childcare for the family, transportation, housing. These are the issues that I believe as mayor that the city can better address. So we're going to be working on safe routes to school, ensuring that we have robust after-school programming for our young people to help with math and reading levels. And we're also going to launch a community education commission, bringing DPSCD charter and our superintendent to the table to really begin to measure the gaps and how the city can be a greater partner.
One of the things that we would do as the next mayor is to appoint a cabinet level position, chief educational officer.
Okay.
That would be a part of my administration that wouldn't supplant and wouldn't replace the school board, because the residents in the city have already said that they want an elected school board. But we would put somebody in partnership with them to address the social ills that address truancy. We want to talk about fixing the problem of children not showing up to class, but we got to deal with all of those social issues, and the city needs to partner with the districts in order to make sure that we're leveraging the resources of the city in order to accomplish that.
All right, so to talk more about this, we're going to bring in the reporter crunching all the numbers. Lori Higgins is with Chalkbeat Detroit. That's a nonprofit news organization covering education. Lori, thank you so much for joining me here. Obviously, we see the numbers here, and both candidates kind of alluded to some of the issues, but are you seeing any trends behind the numbers, what some of the reasons are for this absenteeism?
Sure. There's a number of causes for chronic absenteeism, and I first just want to point out that DPSCD obviously gets a lot of attention for its high chronic absenteeism rate, but we also see the same happening in many of the charter schools in the city. And it comes down to poverty being a leading cause of it, and that is presenting itself in transportation issues, housing issues, health issues, and safety. I still remember interviewing a parent a couple years ago who lives maybe about 4 or 5 blocks away from her daughter's school, but she's often having health issues and can't walk her daughter to school. And when she can't walk her to school, her daughter just doesn't go to school. And by the middle of that school year, her daughter had missed 50 school days. And when it comes to transportation, you look at the fact that high school students in the Detroit School District don't have yellow school bus transportation, so they take city buses to get to school for the most part, or they get, private transportation from their parents. What we heard from a lot of kids is that, the bus system is not consistent. We interviewed a kid who, 6 o'clock in the morning, he was on his way to school. It was cold. He's at the bus stop. The bus just drives right past him. And so he said, I'm not going to wait another 45 minutes for a bus, so I'm just going to go home. So that's how easy it is for a student to become chronically absent. And a lot of these are issues that schools by themselves can't handle. They can't address these. They can't fix the poverty issues in the city. And that's why there's been a growing call for the city to play a stronger role in helping schools address these issues.
What's interesting too is that oftentimes when we talk about absenteeism and kids not making it to school, sometimes the blame is placed directly on the kid or the parents, thinking they just don't want to be there, when rarely is that the case.
You're right. I mean, there are some students who just don't want to come to school, but for the most part, I believe, based on our interviewing, based on our reporting, that parents in general want their kids to get to school. That kids want to get to school. There are just factors that are making it very difficult for them to get to school.
So speaking of those factors, and you kind of listed a lot of them, and both candidates listed some there as well. You've been covering education in the city of Detroit for some time now. What do you think are some of the key issues that need to be addressed? Is it transportation? Is it childcare? Is it better access to health care for some of those parents, or is it everything?
Honestly, Nick, it's everything. I don't think that there's any one issue that candidates can address. I think that they have to address all of it, but I do think that the city is in a good position to be able to tackle some of these issues, to provide resources to families, to look and see what the gaps are, to figure out like what can the city do to address some of these issues with the school leaders as partners. But yeah, I'll just repeat it. Like I don't think that there's any one thing that that they can latch onto and say this is going to be our big issue. I think they've got to address a lot of different things.
Yeah. Okay, Lori, we are going to take a short 90-second break for commercials. When we come back, we're going to talk more about this. Welcome back to Local 4 Live. We are back now with Lori Higgins from Chalkbeat Detroit, which is a nonprofit news organization covering education. Lori, we had just talked about some of the issues that were causing absenteeism and causing kids not to get to school, especially in the city of Detroit. And I know I asked you which one do you think is an issue. You said all of them. Do you think that one of them, if addressed first, would get the most kids back to school?
I'm not sure. I will say that transportation is a pretty key issue. Kids can't get to school if they don't have transportation. And data from the Detroit Peer Group at Wayne State shows that I think a third of Detroiters don't have access to a car. And so, and the district actually surveyed students recently, and they talked about this at the last school board meeting, that a lot of the kids said that if the district provided bikes for them, they would be able to get to school on a regular basis. Now, bikes sounds like a really great idea, except when you think about Michigan winters.
Right.
And that's not going to be very practical in the winter, but it certainly would be, during the spring and fall months. So I do think that if there's one, and I'm not an expert, so I'm just thinking offhand, just based on what we've heard from young people, that transportation would probably be something that would work. I'll note that the Detroit School District is piloting a program next year to provide yellow school bus transportation for students who attend Henry Ford High School and East English Village High School. Those two schools have very high rates of chronic absenteeism, and the idea is to see whether or not providing the yellow school bus transportation actually improves chronic absenteeism in those schools.
Gotcha. Okay, so not necessarily in the city of Detroit as of late, but we have seen in many communities this kind of push and pull and tug of war between city leaders and school leaders, because the school leaders, they have their own mayor, so to speak, and the superintendent. What do you think the conversations need to be here in Detroit, so this next mayor, whoever it might be, is working closely but not overbearing with Dr. Vitti?
Yeah, for sure. That is an issue. Detroit has had mayoral control, and there were not great feelings about that time in the city's history. And I think, as you heard the two candidates already say, like, they have no intention of wanting to control the school district. I think that they need to be, to live up to that, they will have to demonstrate that they just want to be a partner with the school districts. They just want to be able to bring school leaders together. You heard that from both of them, wanting to bring school leaders, both from charter schools and the school district, to sit at the table together to talk about some of these issues. And that can be tricky in Detroit, given that we have one school district, but we also have 56 different charter school boards, and they're all independently operated, and they're not used to having this kind of collaboration, but this may be what's needed in the city to address some of the issues.
Well, and as we've said multiple times now, looking at the issues that are likely the ones leading to these issues, I mean, transportation, childcare, top in the list, healthcare on there as well, but those are things that the city can help with.
Absolutely, yes. We wrote about how asthma is contributing to chronic absenteeism, and interviewed a family that talked about, like, all of their children have really severe asthma and they were missing a lot of school. And so they were working closely with one of the local hospitals to provide the kind of medical support that those young people needed in order to make sure they could get to school. And it's improved since, this became a critical issue in that family. So we see, the medical community helping, but and I think that is probably what's going to be needed for all these other issues. The transportation community, there are folks that think that the city needs to address some of the inconsistency issues with the city buses. So there are a number of opportunities for people who have the power to do something to address some of these issues.
Yeah, and speaking of, and producer Steven's already told me that I'm out of time, but I have to ask one more question, Steven, I'm sorry. Lori, do you anticipate education being a key role, or at least one of the roles, in the November general election?
Oh, absolutely. I think that there are going to be a lot of big issues, but education for sure is one of them. I think this is the first time we've seen the candidates being very vocal and passionate about this issue. So I do expect it to be a key issue in the November general.
Which is ironic because they don't control the school system. So we'll see how it goes.
Exactly.
All right, Lori, thank you so much for your time this Monday morning. We appreciate you.
Thanks for having me.